We have Etinosa Agbonlahor on today, which she is incredible. She has a background in finance, and she has also a background in real estate investing, and just the way that she teaches how she makes decisions around her money. If you're on here because you've read Profit First, or because you want to take better action with the money in your bank account, or you just want more money in your bank account, this is a great episode to listen to because of the knowledge she has and what she's trained herself on and what she's been trained on professionally as well too. Please listen to this episode, gain something from it, and take action from it, and it will help you become where and get to where you want to go. Thanks for listening. Hey, thanks for joining me on the Profit First REI Podcast. I have a special guest today, Etinosa Agbonlahor. So there we go. I got it. There we go. That's where I wanted to make sure I introduce her, because she was introduced to me. And anyone who introduces someone to me, I want to get their story out there. But I also am very excited about this one, Etty, because you come from a very distinct background. It sounds like we help in a lot of the same manner, but you're helping corporate and you're helping big businesses, where we're helping, the business owners and the small, mom and pop shops out there. So I'm really excited to get to interview you, and thanks for being on the show today.
Thank you for having me, David. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah, I'm excited to get this rolling. So, okay, you're also a podcast host for Her First Real Estate Deal. Is that it? Her First House Real Estate Podcast. So if you want to go and follow her there, but you're also a real estate investor and you're working in corporate. So what came first? Were you a real estate investor? Did you go down the corporate route? And I'm wondering how you got into the real estate game.
So I got into real estate, actually. I was working for a bank in Australia, and I had been working there for a couple of years and was ready to kind of start to put some reps on the ground back in the US, I'm from New York. So got into real estate by buying my very first property while I was living in Sydney and working in Sydney, and coordinating buying an investment property in Atlanta, which was an interesting journey, given I was doing this in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. But to answer your question, corporate definitely came first. Had to save up some money to understand how things work before getting into real estate investing.
So how did you get into the side where, because when everyone sends me their bio and I read it over and I'm like, okay, I want to get to know her more. How did you get into the side where you're helping people on the financial side in the corporate world? And we were laughing about it a little bit before, but it even said in your bio, large scale interventions around the psychology of money and organizations and corporations. So I'm just very intrigued by that, because obviously I know my journey, but I'd like to know your journey, and especially on the corporate side and how that's gone.
Absolutely. So I started off in the financial domain because I had a deep interest in personal finance. So I remember getting my very first paycheck for my very first corporate job, which was actually in publishing. So I'm a huge reader. I love reading books. Love reading any book in front of me, I will read it. I'm a massive reader. And so throughout college, I kept reading and interning at publishing houses and literary.
Okay, sorry. I got to stop you there. What's your favorite book series or book of all time?
Oh gosh, book of all time is going to be hard. I can't do all time, but I'll tell you the ones that I've recently read that have blown my mind. I just read Recursion by Blake Crouch. Did not sleep. I picked it up at 9 p.m. at night thinking this is going to be a bedtime read. I'll read a chapter or two and go to bed. I was up until 2 a.m. because I could not drop that book.
What was it called?
Recursion, and it's by Blake Crouch. So highly recommend that you pick that up in the morning if you plan to have a big day.
If you want to sleep at night. That's great. Well, I wrote that down. So I'm sorry for interrupting, but I'm a bibliophile too. So I'm what are you reading? What do you love to read, or what have you read in the past? So, okay. Sorry to interrupt you. You were in the publishing. You were working there.
Yep.
Okay, keep going.
Yep. So I was working in publishing because I'm a big reader, and so got a job right out of college working in publishing. And so the plan was I was going to do that while I figured out what I wanted to kind of do with my life, what I was going to go to grad school for. So I ended up working in publishing longer than I thought I would. I worked there for 3 years before kind of coming back to the point of, right, what do we actually want to do? Or is this going to be it forever? And so I started to kind of explore, well, what else would I be interested in? What else do I want to do as a degree? Because as much as I love publishing and love books, you don't make a lot of money actually being in the publishing industry. It's people will tell you what you make. Anyway, so I had to figure out what I actually wanted to do, and that would intersect between what I love to do, what I enjoy, and also would kind of start to create a foundation for the life I wanted to live, the kind of life I wanted to live. Had a massive interest in personal finance. Just remember getting that first paycheck, and I'm a numbers person, so I had already done the math between my gross kind of salary and what I expected to get in my weekly paycheck. And it was off by like 2/3. And I was like, what the heck? And my parents were like, did you not think taxes were a thing? And from that moment, it kind of got me just keen on personal finance and understanding how all of this stuff works. So I've done about 3 years in publishing, trying to figure out what the next thing is, talking to a mentor and saying, well, I really like personal finance. I have a background and an undergrad in psychology. Is there a way to like bring these two things together? And he hands me this book. It's called Predictably Irrational by Dan Ariely. And it's a book about behavioral economics and how we've been wired to think about money and make financial decisions, and how people can actually optimize the decision-making environment to help people get to a better place financially, improve financial well-being.
Yeah.
Read it, I was like, whoa, this is amazing. And so right away, really interested in it. Started to talk to every single behavioral economist I could find across the world. I talked to about easily rounding up about 20 people in the UK, US, just everywhere I could find a behavioral economist. I reached out to them, spoke to them, tried to understand what it is that they actually do, decided that this is what I wanted to do. So had a bunch of money saved up, quit my job, went to the UK, got a master's, got a job right away in Australia, worked there, and then got another job and moved back to the States, still working in behavioral economics.
Okay. So I have way more questions now. First, let's talk about, you said you got a taste for personal finance with your first paycheck. You also said you're a numbers person. Do you think you inherited any of that from your parents, like, or one of your parents more numbers inclined, or neither? And like, you got a different gene, or like what? Like, I would love to know, where did your penchant for numbers come from?
That's interesting. I know that my attention to personal finance came from my mom, because I remember when I was growing up, she would give me like self-help books to read. And then for every book I read, if I wrote a book report, she would give me 100 naira, which is, I don't know, maybe 3 days worth of lunch money.
Yeah.
It's a chunky amount of money for a kid. So I'd read a personal finance book or a self-help book. I'd write a book report. If she liked it, she'd give me some money for having done it. So I think my interest in finance and how wealth works and how money works probably came from my mom. In terms of actually being a numbers person, I don't know. I think they're both actually more technically driven.
Okay.
So I don't know who it came from necessarily. They're both kind of big on numbers.
And they're not behavioral economists?
No.
Economists?
So one works in medical informatics. So they
Okay.
teach doctors how to use like medical systems, I think.
Okay.
The other one, he runs a business that works with the government and provides kind of child services to them.
Okay. So no, you didn't have someone going down that specific route showing you the way. You were just very interested, which is so interesting. Did you start when you got that first paycheck and got interested in personal finance? Was there anyone you followed in the personal finance space and started reading up on that, or was it more of you're going to, when you read that book, Predictably Irrational, and that's what got you started? I'm just wondering.
At the time, I think that I was following people like Paula Pant, who runs the Afford Anything.
Okay.
It's a podcast now, but back then it was like a blog that she was doing every so often. And I don't know if Ramit Sethi was already doing things back then, but I know I was following people like that who were
like that.
kind of, here's how actually money works without any of the fluff and, nonsense.
Yeah. Would you still recommend them for people?
100% would recommend the both of them still, because I think that they have good fundamentals. I actually ended up being a TA on Paula Pant's course for real estate. So I took it when I was getting into real estate, liked it, ended up being a TA a couple of sessions in that course. I would still recommend the both of them. I think they have good fundamentals.
Okay. Awesome. I just want to make sure, because I'm very interested in people's journey, because you also said on this journey, you kind of snuck that in there, but you said my mentor. You said you had a mentor. How did you get a mentor? Who came up with the concept of the mentor for you? Like, where did you go and seek this person? It's like that was just kind of tucked in there, that your mentor gave you this book, which changed your life, which put you on this path. But like, let's back up to, how'd you get the mentor?
Okay, so crazy story. I cannot remember this mentor's name. I always say my mentor because I genuinely, during this, can't remember his name. But it was through, it was through my college somehow, because I went to college in City University of New York, and they must have had like some sort of like alumni connection or something. But through that program, I was matched up with this guy, and like we were just talking about, right, like what are your options? Do you want? Because I thought maybe I was gonna go back and get an MBA, but I knew it wasn't. I
Mm.
didn't quite want to go down that route. I wanted something that was more kind of oriented in everything I was interested in. And so it was within that conversation, but it wasn't a traditional mentorship in the sense of we had a whole journey and they're still with me today. No, it was very kind of transactional, for lack of a better word, of like, I was trying to figure out what to go to school for. And I think somebody at Hunter was like, you should talk to this guy a couple of times. And within that, something kind of came out of it. I should go back and find his name actually and be like, hey, actually, you changed my life and thank you.
Right. That was like that seemed like a pretty pivotal point. So I'm just wondering how you got introduced or that because I know, especially in the real estate world, like a lot of people have mentors or people even listening to a podcast like this. This is a form of mentorship and your story and like how can people and you've already given a couple people's names that they could follow if they want, more financial help on the personal finance side. So I'm just very interested. Okay. You also said another thing that I heard where you said you saved up a lot of money, to jump in and become the behavioral, economist. And I'm wondering, where did you get that portion? Was it because you were interested in personal finance, so you were following their principles and following what you had learned, or were you more of a savior just growing up and you naturally bent towards that? So that's where you were making all this money and you actually had learned how to keep it too. Just wondering where that played in as
That's
well.
actually a really interesting question. I was talking to a researcher a couple of years ago, and they had this really interesting piece of research around how some people actually tend to be more savings oriented.
Yeah.
So it's called your personal savings orientation, where like naturally you're inclined towards being a saver or being a spender, which is super fascinating for everything we do in terms of trying to help people optimize their finances. But I remember being young and getting like an actual cash, actual
Yeah.
cash allowances. And I had a storage tin where I would keep my notes of cash and just watch it stack up.
Yeah.
And so I have always done that. I did a study abroad in the UK, and every week my parents would send me some money. And I remember having like pretty much about like half of what they had sent me just stacked up in neatly to like euro bills or pound bills afterwards. And I took changed it back into dollars, brought it back with me to the US. And so I've always been a saver, just kind of naturally. It's never been difficult for me to save.
Yeah. I just wondered because you said you had saved up to get into it, and that was just, fascinating to me, just your journey and then there. And I just wondered if it all changed like when you found these books, but sounds like that was innately who you were, which is very cool because that's where I think a lot of people struggle on that side. Now, you had to go to 20 people and you talked to a lot of people. What do you do? What does a behavioral economist do for, especially for these big corporations? I have so many questions around that. Like, what's different with a corporation than a personal, like an individual and a small business and all that. But let's just start with, can you give us like, I definitely need the layman's terms.
Okay. So you run a business, right? And your business works with other small businesses to help them with their bookkeeping and to help them with their kind of financial accounting, right?
Yep.
So imagine that within your business, you had a bunch of clients who you had created this incredible kind of process for and this incredible software for.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, you'd meet with them, they get super excited, and then they just wouldn't do anything about it. And so you'd be like, well, I think I created a good process, but why am I not able to shift my customers' behaviors, right?
Yeah.
So you might call in a behavioral economist and say, I think I've designed a good process. I think the experience is excellent, but there's something stopping my client from taking action and I cannot figure out what it is. And so your behavioral economist would come in and using their expertise in psychology and how people make financial decisions, in even down to neuroscience, they might go, okay, let's walk through the experience together and let's audit it together, right? They might go, okay, do you know what the problem is? They're excited, but then you leave them with 6 different things to do and people get overwhelmed by choice. Let's start with what is the most important thing you need them to do and let's lean into that. Or you leave them with only 2 choices, which is great, but the first one is really difficult and they have no idea how to get started on it. Let's break that down. Can you simplify it? Can you kind of like reduce the hassle there? And so a behavioral economist really largely is about taking the psychology behind financial decision making and starting to help optimize kind of behavior change, ideally with the ultimate aim of what improving financial behaviors. Other people are doing this in like the health space and the policy space. The idea is like, where people are doing things that either are not valuable to them, how do we help reorient? And where people are not doing things that are valuable to them, you've invested thousands of dollars into working with Simple CFO and you're not taking their advice, right? How do we help kind of close the gap between what you should be doing and what you're actually doing to get you to a better place?
Hmm. And so the companies then, the corporations or the businesses, so like it would be Simple CFO reaching out to you to be like, how do we close that gap? And that's who you're working with is like those businesses to close that gap.
More or less. So I work with really big organizations. And so
Man,
imagine
how do you do that on a big scale?
client, right? Imagine you've got, for example, I worked with a retail bank in Australia and they, I believe 1 out of every 3 Australians was a customer with them. This was a bank
Whoa.
that's embedded in the fabric of the entire nation.
Yeah.
And so you can imagine for that bank, improving their customers' financial well-being was improving the nation's financial well-being.
Right.
And so the kinds of conversations we're having with behavioral economists might be anything from how do we help our customers who are in debt and they're like in the early stages of debt? They're not all the way behind yet. What do we do to kind of help them navigate that? How do we have better conversations and better experiences with them, knowing that when people are in debt, the way they think is super different from when people are kind of on the level with their finances, right? So how do we kind of do that? And so we might come in and say, okay, great, these are a couple of things we think we recommend, but let's experiment, right? And that's where the large scale comes in. Let's run a large scale randomized control trial. You do it with some people and not with other people where it's ethical to do so. Measure results kind of in a quantified manner, implement that in an iterated fashion. So it's very much, if it's a really big organization, it's optimizing within the organization. And then if it's like a smaller behavioral science consultancy, they might be working with lots of different kind of organizations on very specific behavior change initiatives.
Okay. Because that's what you're talking about with a large scale intervention. It's like you coming in there and running those types of groups and things. And that's a great example too. Like if they're in debt, how do we help them, navigate those waters and for that specific customer set? Because like you said, for something that big, it's impacting the whole nation,
Yeah.
if they've got their money there. So that's very interesting. And then how long have you been doing that? Like as
Almost a decade now. Almost
wow.
a decade as a career. Yeah.
Do you have any crazy stories or like do you have anyone that's I don't know, either a story or that was a great turnaround or in without giving names or companies of like, yeah, we implemented this and this was incredible and we knew we found what the true problem was and we helped them, have that
So I can
intervention and
talk about
turnaround.
something that's public facing. When I was in Australia, my team built something called a benefits finder.
Yeah.
And essentially what it did was there's a lot of benefits that people qualify for that they just don't know about. And I'm certain it's the same in the US, right?
Yeah.
You might have childcare credits, you might have this or that or the other thing. And people just don't know about them. So there were billions of dollars being left on the table every single year because people didn't know that they had benefits that they could tap into. And so my team came up with this idea of what if we built a tool that just help people from the get-go, looking at the information they already had about them, say, hey, I think we qualify for these 3 things. Let's make it super simple for you to access those benefits. And so works not just with the bank, but with the government, the Australian government, and with other kind of social services providers, figure out what benefits people qualified for, build that into the bank's app. So imagine your banking app, you open it up and it's telling you social service benefits that you qualify for, and streamlined a lot of the processes of accessing those benefits where it could. So that's an example of behavioral economics really implemented to like transform financial well-being, right?
Yeah.
And imagine examples of that in the US. Imagine if your taxes were automated, right? If you have simple W-2 or simple, you have a couple of rental holdings, you come in, it's pre-filled for you. All you have to do is double check the numbers. The Australian government actually already does that for its citizens. But imagine all of these little like hassles that people have to deal with every day. Imagine all of that being simplified in a way that people can live their best financial lives without having to invest a ton of effort.
Yeah.
So that to me is the example of where the vision can go, but it can be so much broader and just so much more exciting, right?
Yeah. That seems like you're making a difference on the day to day of people's lives. Seems like too, it's really about simplifying and making it, making the right financial decisions in their grasp, where they can actually feel it and touch it and be like, okay, at least it's in front of you. Now psychology says, are you going to take it or not? Like, are you going to take that choice, and how do we help you make the decision that's best for you? Well, that's very cool. I love that. So then you got into real estate, and you're still in real estate. What made you start a podcast, the Her First House Real Estate? I'm just very interested in that too, because I know you've got that, and with your background, with what you're doing, it's just, I love that you also are getting your voice out there too.
Yeah, so Her First House, the podcast really started with, I had a very kind of trying year in real estate. We all know those years where
Yes.
everything that can will, just
Yeah.
every single week somebody's calling you about something new on some property. And I was like, there has to be something I'm missing. First of all, I started a goal of like, next year I don't want anybody to call me about anything disastrous on any of these properties. So how do we get to that place? Like, my definition of success for 2024 is that I have freedom and I have peace in my rental holdings.
Yeah.
And then
how's that going this year?
Listen, not a single.
Good. I'm glad you knocked on wood.
Not a single issue so far. Everything has taken care of itself so far.
So far. Well, that's great.
I mean, we're in August, so
Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah. You're out. You're past the halfway point. So.
But I also decided, as part of kind of simplifying my life and creating more space and more kind of peace in my life, I wasn't going to buy any rental properties this year, because for the last couple of years I've picked up like at least one a year.
Yeah.
And then I also just kind of wanted to see money in my bank account instead of seeing it like, as an investment in, on balance sheet somewhere. I was like, I want to see money. Actually, I want to see actual liquidity, please and thank you.
Yeah.
So decided I wouldn't buy any house, but I still wanted to have a toe in real estate. I still wanted to be learning. I still wanted to be connected with people, even though I wasn't buying houses. And I also had a lot of friends who were just really curious about, well, how are you doing this real estate thing? And like, is it because you work in finance? You make a lot of money? Like, how do we get into this? And so it was twofold. One, wanted to kind of like what I call getting my PhD in real estate, like talk to all the smart people I know who are doing this and doing it well.
Yeah.
But then also help women and other people understand that everyone in real estate does not have two heads. There's somebody like you who has figured out how to invest in real estate and do it in a sustainable manner. And there's so many different ways to like get there. And so that really was the impetus for creating the podcast. And since then, just had a lot of fun, learned a lot, and also now have had 3 people tell me that they bought their first investment property.
Oh, so cool.
By listening to the podcast. And we've only been doing this for under a year. So
wow.
Impact is being made.
Yeah. No, I love hearing stories like that. See, I love how you speak, because that also just raised another question. Because you said for last year, like it was, or the years before, everything that can go wrong will go wrong, and it has. And then this year you made the decision, I want peace in my life. Like, do you think, because a lot of people are just out there, go, 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 scale, no, I'm going to feel bad if I don't buy that at least one property this next year. Was it that you were just so fed up that you were like, I just want peace more than I want another property? Or were you like, well, no, what do I really want? What do I have currently? What does this fit in? Like, how was that process? Because I feel like some people can't slow down like you did to say, what do I really want? Like, and if you want peace, and I love it. Like, your answer was great. You have peace up to this point. It's August, when we're recording this. So like, how was that thought process of getting to where you really want?
So I'll give credit to 2 people. Leon Jensen, I'm sure you know.
Oh yeah.
Leon.
Yeah.
Leon is the one who talks about freedom and peace all the time. And
yeah.
What is
yes, it does.
Of freedom? What is your definition of peace? What's going to bring you freedom and peace?
Yeah.
So Leon is a big part of that. And then Pete Fortunato, I think he might have been last year before. I sat down with Pete, and I had an issue with something, and he was walking me through like potential solutions. And he made this analogy of a lot of people go after like the big multifamilies, and they just want to grow, and then they burn out because while they're spending all of this money, they're not thinking about what's sustainable.
Yeah.
And so you see people who started, they ran really hard and then they just ran out of steam halfway through. Whereas if you had bought one property a year, nice and simple, buy and hold, you have enough kind of gas, more or less, for the whole journey. Right. You didn't wear yourself out too quickly. And so both of those perspectives helped me understand that this is a longer game. I mean, when you're talking to people who have been investing since before I was even alive, right?
Right.
Leon
Especially
has at
Pete
least 15
and Leon. Yeah.
at
Both
least
of them.
50 years in this, both of them.
Yeah.
It helps you kind of take a step back and go, okay, what is the longer journey? And there will be time down the road to do all of these other things, but not if I burn out or run out of cash now. And I think that was largely it, just having the perspective of people who are much older and much wiser than me to kind of ground me in how do you do this in a sustainable manner.
Yeah. I love that. This is good stuff. So that's where there's been so much good information here. I love from even what you do in the day to day is so applicable. I think even on people's personal lives, just how are you making decisions around money? I also loved your journey of like getting to where you are and the mentors in your life and the saving up and being able to jump in and then having different mentors in the real estate world telling you what you really want from real estate. I think that's another huge part that people don't get into. And then you making that decision of sitting down and saying, this is what I really want from my business, from my life, and how I want to help people, and your decision-making process around the podcast. So this has been awesome. Make sure if you're listening, go check out her podcast. Sounds like she can help you if you're trying to get that first deal and just trying to take action, or she can at least introduce you to some pretty cool people. That's where you can go on her podcast and listen there. That's awesome. How else can people get a hold of you if they want more of Etty?
So I recommend going to my website. It's herfirsthouse.org. So that's her, H-E-R, first, F-I-R-S-T, house, you know how to spell it, .org. And there'll be a contact form there. Yeah. I'm also on Instagram, and I'm at Real Estate with Etty. That's E-T-I. And so you can find me either on Instagram or through the website.
Cool. Well, that was very easy. herfirsthouse.org. So that's the website, and then you could go to her Instagram handle as well, too. Now, this has been awesome. Thank you for being on here today and sharing your wisdom and sharing the thought processes we could go into. Now that I've got the overview, we could go deeper on another one. We should definitely have another episode that we record together. But if you're also out there and you're also wondering, like, where the heck is my money going as a business owner? And you're like, what is going on? I don't know. I'm making money, but I feel broke. That's where we come into play. Simple CFO. We could put someone on your team to really ask you a lot of the questions that she's doing on a much larger scale with these big businesses out there. We're going to help you the one-on-one with you as the business owner, and that's at simplecfo.com, and get a CFO on your team for just a fraction of the price of a full-time CFO that can help you with this stuff in your mom and pop shop there that we can help you. But thank you again, Etty. This was amazing. It was a great guest, bringing a lot of value. Thanks for being on and for being a great guest today.
Thank you for having me. This was excellent. Loved it.
This episode of the Profit First for REI podcast is over, but there are plenty more where that came from. Are you ready to learn how David and his team can help implement the Profit First system in your business? Schedule a discovery call at simplecfo.com right now. We'll see you next time on the Profit First for REI podcast with David Richter.